emissions down by 2030. So who do you think Justin Trudeau's going to focus on? His billionaire mates or ordinary farmers? Farmers! Bloody farmers! Hello there, you 5.8 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage towards truth. The truth within, the truth without. The unions that we can make with one another to change this little old world of ours. If only we can overcome our superficial differences, perhaps we can create glorious new tribes. And a new order will be born from it. Decentralised, utterly decentralised, not a globalist order. We've already got one of those coming along quite nicely. Thank you. In part due to the likes of Justin Trudeau. Say what we like about Justin Trudeau. His hair is absolutely bloody fantastic. Here he is during this time of global crisis, attending a nice sort of pancake party.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Sunday morning Calgary Stampede pancake breakfast appearance.
He loves a costume, doesn't he, Justin Trudeau? We've seen him as a cowboy. Will we ever see him as an Indian? Oh.
Did not go ahead without a bit of drama. Protesters showed up to the Genesis Centre blaming him for inflation, among other issues. One man in particular caused a disturbance and was asked to leave by police.
How dare you? How dare you disturb this pancake stampede? This is one of our most proud traditions. Well, I'm here to complain about my civil liberties. Do you not understand that this is a fucking pancake party? Justin Trudeau's put a hat on. It took 10 minutes to get the fucking boot black off his face.
But when he refused to leave, police had to escort the man off the property.
What property? This is our street.
And he was arrested for trespassing and resisting arrest.
You're trespassing? What, here on the street? Well, we're arresting you anyway. No, you're not. Right, that's 2 arrests. You just made them both up. I'm going to complain to the government. The government's over there. He's very busy. He's dressed as a cowboy having a pancake. This is a very difficult time, all right?
It was Trudeau's first visit to the Stampede since 2019.
This stampede that he was going to, by the way, is just part of the kind of, the sort of pop star appearances that politicians regularly make. But what Justin Trudeau is hitting the headlines for at the moment is the renewed pressure that he's putting on farmers, something that we're seeing all over the world. By some not centralised coincidence, farmers in Sri Lanka, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the UK, where I'm from, presumably in the United States, I don't know, let us know in the comments below if your agricultural community is being pressured, is because they're supposed to not use a particular type of fertiliser to reduce emissions. But some people, notably Vandana Shiva, guest of this show and brilliant activist, says that the reason that these laws are being introduced isn't to do anything about emissions, no one cares about emissions really, it's to take over those independent farms and centralise them. And there'll be more evidence to suggest that what she's saying is true over the course of this video. That's why you've got to stay to the end. The government is proposing to cut emissions from fertiliser by 30% by 2030 as part of a plan to get to net zero in the next 3 decades. But growers are saying that to achieve that, they may have to shrink grain output significantly at a time when the world is scrambling for more supplies. Weird. The tension comes as efforts to cut carbon dioxide emissions related to energy are lagging, so policymakers are increasingly looking to other sectors, including agriculture. Now, what's interesting about this is when Justin Trudeau's spreading this message, he's doing it by flying all over Canada in a private jet. If there's one thing you don't want to do when spreading the message of not spreading emissions, is spread emissions while you're spreading the message about spreading those emissions. In July, Trudeau managed to rack up 26,000 kilometres aboard his private jet Can Force One. What a stupid name. If you're trying to distance yourself from America, don't name your leader's private jet after their leader's private jet. Well, they got a private jet, have they, for their leader? Yeah, it's called Air Force One. Let's call ours Can Force One. Yes, we bloody well can. Flying across 20 flights, all within Canada. He's bouncing around Canada and again, attending all those pancake parties. 5,500 kilometres came from Trudeau's ship to the Calgary Stampede. That's what we saw him at in that cowboy at. Staying for less than 6 hours for a photo op. They can't be around normal people for too long. They start to feel sick, even if there are delicious pancakes available. Also, the people don't want them there. Hey, you bastard! Why don't you start answering some difficult questions? Oh, stampede me out of this place. These pancakes ain't so sweet. The richest 1% of the global population have used twice as much carbon as the poorest 50% over the last 25 years, according to Oxfam. So if what you were really interested in was reducing carbon, what you would do is you would talk to the most powerful people in the world, the most powerful interests in the world, the most powerful elites in the world, and say, you got to reduce your carbon emissions. And then what they'll do is they'll say, we can't do that because it'll affect our business, and we'll stop all our lobbying, and we'll stop funding your political parties, and we'll stop funding the centralised global agencies that even came up with these ideas in the first place. So why don't you go pressure normal people who are already having a hard time? Why don't you stick it to them, like farmers and truck drivers? Hold on a minute, I'm writing this down. What? Farmers, truck drivers? Billionaires have carbon footprints that can be thousands of times higher than those of average Americans. During the pandemic, obviously, there was a massive wealth transfer. You remember that, don't you? You remember the richest institutions in the world, big pharma, big tech, all of that stuff, big media, all got a lot richer. So whilst that situation may have been crushing penury for a lot of people, for some of the most powerful interests in the world, you'd have to say from a financial perspective at least, it was a good thing. Worldwide sales of private jets soared when commercial travel was banned, according to Oxfam. So while people that couldn't afford private jets were not going anywhere, people that could afford private jets were going places. That's why it didn't matter to them. How many times did you see in the news people having parties and they weren't wearing masks and all that kind of stuff, or going to private islands or whatever? Now, what I think we object to is people talking about ecology and carbon footprints and why farmers should be bankrupted, all the while they're bombing about in private jets. If you want to reduce carbon emissions, if that's what you want, then don't fly about in a private jet. You could save us all the arseache by not going to that pancake day thing. But, I would offer, the reason that isn't what happens is because that isn't the purpose of it. The purpose is to bankrupt ordinary farmers, to destabilise economies that affect ordinary people, while further centralising and globalising wealth, so more edicts of this nature can be put forth, which don't even negatively impact rich people anyway, because they can do what they bloody well like. We're being told that we're in a cost of living crisis, but in a cost of living crisis, massive organisations would not be seeing an increase in profits. This is another wealth transfer where ordinary people are having their limited wealth extracted, centralised and given to corporate power. We will demonstrate that in a second. In country after country, it's the richest who are least affected by the pandemic. They also remain the greatest emitters of carbon. Trudeau has increased average yearly fossil fuel subsidies by $900 million. So energy companies are seeing increased profits while fuel prices are going up. Meanwhile, Trudeau is subsidising the fossil fuel industry. This is a wealth transfer. Where do you think the subsidies come from? Do you think Trudeau's got that in his cowboy hat? No, he hasn't. That's also your money. So you're paying your money to the fossil fuel companies directly, and then the back door, he's giving him another dose of the stuff. That, to me, is institutionalised corruption, institutionalised crime, a second wealth transfer taking place under the cover of a cost of living crisis. The fossil fuel sector has benefited from federal aid of nearly $10.7 billion per year under the Trudeau government. So it's doing quite well, isn't it? While he's bombing about in his private jet, scoffing pancakes, bankrupting farmers, that industry is being subsidised enormously. These subsidies seem to me to be ridiculous. I'd like to see a functioning and sustained agricultural industry, and energy demands have to be met in one way or another. But when ordinary people are paying twice for the same service, you've got to call that what it is, a racket. Why is it that these ideas seem to be happening everywhere at once? Almost as if there are some centralised global agencies that get together in the Swiss Alps to talk about these ideas and share them amongst everybody.
What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau.
Oh, that's interesting. You know him? Oh, yes, I know him. He's got very nice hair, a very nice mouth, and he always chooses the best costumes at party times.
President of Argentina and so on.
Can't you remember the names of the countries of all of the underlings? I'm not suggesting that Klaus Schwab has actual centralised power, merely that he is the host of an influential and important event. As one of our guests said, the most powerful people in the world could meet up wherever they wanted to. What I believe the WEF and Davos is about is the PR wing of globalisation, making financial opportunism seem like woke, good ideas to help people through ecological stuff and identity politics, when in fact, you know, if you own nothing, you might not be that happy.
President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.
We certainly penetrated the cabinet that day. If you fill the cabinet with people with lovely hair, it's no problem to penetrate the cabinet at all. Oh, I didn't mean to pry.
So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau.
You can't run the world if you can't run a microphone.
And I know that half of this cabinet.
Oh, you knew half the cabinet. That's really convenient. That must give you some influence. I mean, you maybe conspire with those people from time to time.
Or even more, half of this cabinet are for our.
Our. Did I say my? I mean our. Our.
Are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Well, thank Thanks for that, mate. It's working out really well, having all these stooges in governments all over the world, fulfilling the edicts and demands of powerful, centralised financial interests. Ordinary people are having a wonderful time. At least Bill Gates ain't flying around the world in private jets, buying up vast tracts of agricultural land while simultaneously saying we have to reduce emissions. Oh no, he is doing that. Bill Gates is the biggest private owner of farmland in the United States. Frequent speaker at Davos, Gates last year released his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Flying around the world in a private jet, telling people how to avoid a climate disaster is like firing cats out of a cannon at people to end animal cruelty. It was later revealed that Gates teamed up with Blackstone in a $4.7 billion deal for the world's largest private jet service company, Signature Aviation. Gates loved private jets. He calls them his guilty pleasure. Amazing.
Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. Now, if we do a really great job, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
10 or 15%.
So there you go. Whether it's Trudeau clamping down on farmers while ignoring billionaire excesses, while subsidising the fossil fuel industries that are already profiting in a so-called cost of living crisis, or Klaus Schwab openly admitting that the leaders of the world and half of Trudeau's cabinet have been schooled at Davos, it seems we are living in interesting times. I would not say these things are a conspiracy theory. It just seems to me that there's evidence of people cooperating with one another in order to pursue an agenda that we can simply leave as financial. We don't need to get into the crazy stuff wearing robes, although, ironically, I am wearing one. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please turn on the notification bell. It's the only way that we can be sure that you will see our videos daily, because we can't trust that little algorithm. The algorithm is a dancer, it's a trickster, it's a serpent. You got to watch the algorithm. Turn on the notification bell. Sign up to my mailing list. Watch these two videos, either of them. They're both fantastic. Become a subscriber. Become a member of our community. We love you. The most important thing that you can do today for me is stay free.